All right, hello. This is the ground sloth here with another sort of Convallaria video. And we are going to continue with our line of video guide. And no, not this guy. We're going to go with part 2 of this girl right here. That's right. Oh, yeah. So, wait, was that? Dentaleon's trying to understand what's going on here. Keep guessing, bud. Keep guessing. Maybe he's confused as to why one of his own hanged men is up here. Right? I ordered one hung man. Hung man. Oh wait, that's a different service. Never mind. False alarm, everyone. He is guarding the bed. He is not invited to the bed. We don't, right? He's like, that's what you've been doing with them? No, I swear that is just a mix-up of play of words. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Okay, anyways. Part 2 in the video guide is going to be just like Xavier, although we did it for part 3 for him, is we're going to go ahead and look at the passives for their class. So for Coco, she's a defender. So we're going to look at the defender passives real quick. Okay. So diving in real quick, we have the first passive, easily obtainable by anyone. For all defender units or allies, in battle, when injured, attack is increased by 12%. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but we're going to go over the math on this thing real quick, okay? So let's take a look real quick. First, we're going to explain what we're going to do, and then we're going to do the calculations. Okay, let's take a look at old Mr. Whiteboard. Yeah, that's right. I brought out the whiteboard. What you going to do? Okay, so let's take a look here. Is this what I want to draw in? Sure, why not? So essentially, when you do an attack, right? Let's say you do 100 points. Okay. Now, in this game, on average, does seem to be that the defensive stats and the attack is usually like half that of a defense stat. Now, it can go a little lower than that, a little higher than that. So we'll just say that the average case is that if you do, and this is all within ratio, right? 100 points of damage of attack stat to 50 points of defense stat is going to net you, well, 50 points of damage total, right? Conversely, when we say on the top end, a defense stat could get to what? Maybe 2/3 of someone's attack stat. So that would be a 66. And then that would be left over 34 points of damage. Okay? So that's kind of the thinking that I'm going to be doing when we start multiplying or adding to our attack stat with that 12%, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at the calculator, which I did not open. Let's open. Okay, well, I hope this doesn't affect the video. Sometimes when I go from like landscape to portrait, it like shrinks the video. So let's hope that it doesn't. Okay, so we start off with 100 points, right? And like we said, when we attack a target that has half our defense, we end up with, well, 50 points of damage. Now, let's consider the injured state condition. The injured state, 20% less damage. So we have to multiply by the damage that's left over, or 80%. We get 40 points. Okay? Now, 112 is going to represent our attack stat increased by 12%. When you increase 100 by 12%, you just add 12. Do the same sort of attack minus defense calculation. Okay? And account for injured state. If we look at our history here, okay, look at that history. Notice that when we did not have that attack stat increase, we ended up with 40 points of damage. And then when we did, we ended up with 49.6. Now, again, we're not considering any other sort of scaling, okay? So we're not doing any damage scaling because of the skill. We're assuming that they're doing 100%, like a basic attack, right? 100%, okay? No damage increases, no damage decreases, except just for the injured state. Now, we did say that we wanted to take a look at what happens when an enemy has a defensive stat that is 2/3 of your attack stat. Okay? So in that case, we will not be using 50 for the defense. As we stated previously, we'll use 66. Okay? 34 points of damage. But if you're injured, that becomes 27.2. Now, let's, or actually, it's 27.2 when you're injured without the attack stat. Okay? Sorry. I messed up. 34 points of damage normally. Okay? But then, if injured, right? You would have 112 points of your attack stat minus the 66. And we are accounting for the injured state. 36.8. So as you can see, that's higher than the 34 points that we had. So when we were attacking, when we were healthy, right? We ended up with 34 points. Then we were injured with a 12% increase in our attack. We ended up with 36.8 points. So in both scenarios, when defense stat of the enemy was half our attack stat, and then when we had 2/3 of our attack stat was their defense, we came out ahead. And the less defense that they have in terms of the ratio, right? The more attack boon we'll get when we're in the injured state. So, for example, if they have a quarter less, right? Let's go ahead and take a look at that one. If they have a quarter less, well, then they would do a quarter less, half as less, right? So 25, right, would be their defense. We'd end up with 75 points of damage. Now, if we're injured, 112 minus 25, then times the 0.8. Okay, we take a look at the numbers, right? This one we actually kind of lost damage, right? So here, when the enemy's defense stat is only a quarter of our attack stat, we ended up with doing 75 points of damage. But then, when we entered the injured state, let's take a look at the history there. We ended up with 69.6, which was lower. Now, what's the reason for this? Well, defenders, as a class, don't really specialize terribly in doing damage, nor do they get access to attack stat increases in their kits usually. And when they do, it's not just for themselves, it's usually for the entire team that they're buffing. Now, since they don't do so much damage, right? When you don't have much of too much damage dealt, because a lot of the damage is already mitigated, increasing the attack stat increases your overall damage more than any damage loss. In this last example, that was the most damage that was normally being done, right? When you have an opponent that has really weak defensive stats, you're doing the most damage. So of course, when you have a 20% damage decrease, that's going to hit way harder than the previous two examples. Okay, so more often than not, when it comes to frontline melee units, they're going to have defensive stats that are going to be half to a third to a half to even like 2/3 of your attack stat. But squishy targets, maybe like archers or marksmen, maybe the mages, they'll have some weaker physical defense stats. Okay. And so this 12% increase attack, it's better than nothing, right? But it seems to be more of a boost to your overall damage when you're injured, when they have higher defenses than when they have lower defenses. Okay, so that's good to know. Let's go ahead and go back to the talent tree and discuss this further with the other pass. And just like that, we're here. Okay, so let's take a look at the other defender passives. We have for all defender allies in battle, area of effect damage taken is decreased by 20% at max. So this is one where I can see a lot of accounts still working on this one, right? It is requiring the highest tier of the talent star upgrade, okay? However, you get access to this earlier on than the last tier. So this will probably be one that you finish off second. Now, area of effect damage, okay? Defender classes tend to stick close to their allies, either because they have to be in block range, which is about 2 tiles, or 3 tiles away from themselves, or they need to be near their allies because they have an alert type skill like T-Dun, right? It's more effective when they're around their allies, or they provide buffs to their allies, either passively by being near them or actively, like Coco, who has a lot in her Coco treasure chest. However, the range of those skills is either 1 block away or 2 blocks away. And when defender classes have a lot that revolve around being around their allies, naturally they're going to catch area of effect damage more often than not, right? And you don't want them to be terribly punished with area of effect spells. So this is one way of mitigating that damage, right? Because they're going to be the class out of all the classes that are going to be within 2 tiles of a unit almost at all times, unless you are a defender class that sort of dives in on the other enemy team and creates distance that way, like Alexi. So yeah, so area effect, 20% reduction in damage. There's not much to say about that there, right? Area effect damage, comes in both physical and magical, so it does not matter whether or not the typing. It's just a reduction in that type of damage. Now, I do believe that area of effect damage is its own specific typing. So if you have general damage reduction, it will stack multiplicatively, not additively, in my understanding of how damage calculations work. Every different sort of source is multiplicative, right? I do need to do some further testing, but that's my understanding at this point in time. There are cases where damage increases and such, like stack additively, but I believe that's for like within the same tier of buffs. Okay. Lastly, we have this last skill. Let me go ahead and see the maximum. For all defender allies in battle, when having a physical shield, damage is increased by 20%. Okay, so Coco has no access to physical shield in her kit. So we can take a look at that. So here's Coco right over here, right over here. That took a bit. She has no skills that give her any form of shield. So will Coco be able to make use of this? Yes and no. Yes, meaning it's possible. Okay. So there are characters that can give shields. For example, if I look at which character would I see? Like a Papal Ice Priest. Papal Ice Priest has... Is it Papal Ice Priest? No. It's the other priest. It's not Pip. It's Dip. Where's Dip at? D-I-P. Dip. Okay. So he gains a physical shield. That's nice. That's a passive shield for himself. Grants the target a physical shield equal to 130% of the character's magic attack for 2 turns. So, of course, if we're thinking of Dip, then we're also thinking of Simona, right? Simona being the legendary unit that can give her whole entire team a shield. So units that can give shields will help give Coco that condition of having a shield so that she can have a 20% damage increase buff. In addition to that, there is a legendary trinket. It's the shield. I don't have it, but here, we'll search it for you one. Okay, here we go. The Luxite Great Shield. You know, at max, it's a 60% HP shield, active 1 time, or 2 times at max. But initially, you get it at 40% with 1-time use. And it lasts 2 turns, and it's an active skill. It's not instant. So that's another source of shielding. And there's one more source of shielding in the game. Let's go ahead and zip on that. Okay, and that's the Desire for Temperance Tarot Whisper. At the start of battle, you get a physical shield equal to 25% of the combined physical and magical attack. Now, in late game, for a lot of these units, their main stat, if they are a damage dealer, even if they're not, it's only off by like a couple hundred, gets anywhere from 4,000 to 4,500 or so, and the off stat will probably rest somewhere around the high 3,000s, right? So combined together, you're looking at somewhere around maybe like 7,500 to 8,000 combined total. Anywhere from 7 to 8,000. So a quarter of that will become a shield. And it's at the start of battle. It's not at the start of every turn. So it's a one-time deal. But it's a way for you to get a shield onto a character. In the case of defenders, defenders get a 20% damage increase when they have a shield. Also note that if attacks land on a character with a shield and the shield does not break, certain debuffs will not stick. Okay, so that's to keep in mind. If you do damage and you don't break through the shield and hit the actual HP pool, certain debuffs will not land on a particular character. Now for the increase for this tarot is a 15% decrease in damage that is taken. Okay? So now, while you have a shield, okay, so you need to have some form of shield. It doesn't even have to be the shield you start off with this tarot card, but it will decrease your damage by 15% as long as you have a shield, which is great for characters like Simona, right? If you want to build her that way, like tanky, or great if you use Coco in conjunction with Simona, right? And that's where I would say that this Tarot Whisper may have some use. It's also kind of hard for me to recommend the Luxite Shield from earlier because, like, unless you have it, I think at 3, 4, or 5 star, you're only getting one use of it, and there's plenty of other things Coco can be doing for your team. In addition, right, having this Tarot Whisper, right, now is nice if you have another teammate who can also provide constant shielding when this shield eventually breaks, so that you constantly are having 15% damage taken, like decreased, in addition to a 20% damage increase. And having some extra shielding is always nice. Now, you may not even use this Tarot Whisper at all, and just rely on someone like Simona giving a shield, and that's that. You'll get a nice 20% damage buff. But do know that Coco and any defender will get a damage increase buff, provided that, again, you level up these passives. Naturally, if you don't level them up, they're not going to do anything for you, right? Now, should you put all that effort in? I would probably say not necessarily for damage. Okay, Coco is a defender that is not doing damage. Okay, we'll take a look more in her kit later on, but in terms of damage, Coco is doing single target attacks, but she's not doing giant nukes. Okay, she's mostly there to provide healing support and boons for your team and a little bit of crowd control. Okay, well, we went over all 3 defender passives for Coco. All right, a little bit more involved, so that's why it's its own video. All right, thanks for watching. Bye. See you in the next one, where we'll actually go over her trait. Okay, bye bye.